Biblical Archaeology, 5. Quote, "Some have identified this statue as Joseph, the Israelite vizier of Pharaoh in the book of Genesis. The Bible records the history of the relationship between God and the children of Abraham. Archaeology confirms many of the historical details mentioned in the Bible. In this video series, we discuss various examples. Joseph from Genesis. Among the main graves, all vaulted tombs, is a single grand pyramid tomb with the broken remains of a 3-meter-high, sitting statue of a Semitic lord in a long, rich, multicolored coat, believed by Roll and others to depict the famous vizier Anku. The Torah records that Joseph wore just such a coat, the envy of his brothers. Genesis chapter 37. In a lecture at the British Museum in July 2004, Dorothea Arnold, chairman of the Department of Egyptian Art and its curator emeritus, determined that this statue must have been created in the same royal workshops in Hawara where the statues of Amenemhat III were carved. Then, to further stress her statement that this colossal statue excavated by BTAC is one of the most important discoveries of the last quarter of a century in Egypt, she surprised all by proclaiming, "Some have identified this statue as Joseph, the Israelite vizier of Pharaoh in the book of Genesis." This was a weighty nod of acknowledgement that the Semitic vizier immortalized in the statue is likely to be Anku, the historical vizier who served under Amenemhat III, and the biblical Joseph. Partial acknowledgement was voiced to David Roll by a co-attendee of the lecture, Professor Alan Lloyd of Swansea University, chairman of the Academic Committee of the Egypt Exploration Society and Fellow of the Society of Antiquaries of London. He wouldn't mind labeling the Asiatic official Proto-Joseph, but was puzzled when Roll confronted him with the implications of the whole picture. Could we call the Asiatics residing in Avaris, Goshen, in the latter 12th and 13th dynasties, Proto-Israelite? Followed by a Proto-Exodus, and then a Proto-Conquest, by a Proto-Joshua, to describe the widespread destruction of Canaanite cities in the Middle Bronze Age? Why not do away with all the protos, and simply accept that the events described in the biblical narratives were based on real history? Dr. Peter van der Veen, professor of West Semitic Studies at the University of Mainz, admitted that the picture of Anku's viziership, in its many details, fits the story of Joseph remarkably well. Anku is the core of the Egyptian name of Joseph recorded in the Torah, Zatanaf Pa-Ankh, according to Dr. Kenneth Kitchen. This meant, he who lives. According to Roll, it would have meant, the one who lives. The Torah relates that the Pharaoh was awed by Jacob, Joseph's father, Genesis chapter 47-48. Considering how the Pharaoh witnessed the dramatic reunion between the vizier and his father, who had given Joseph up for dead for so many years, it is particularly fitting that he would name his vizier, the one who lives. Unlike any of the other main graves, which retained their bones and buried valuables, the body in the pyramid tomb had long been removed in what seems to be an act of piety. Grave robbers plunder treasure, not bones. This matches what is related in the Torah and Book of Joshua. For the request of Joseph, that his bones not be left behind in Egypt, but be brought to the promised land, Genesis chapter 50, Moses himself brought Joseph's remains to the border of Canaan, Exodus chapter 13, after which they were buried in Shechem, Joshua chapter 24. Statue of biblical Joseph found. They call the statue the Asiatic, i.e., he is not Egyptian. Rather he is a man who comes from the area of Canaan, Israel. Not much is left of his face because after his rule, as with the biblical Joseph, his people seem to have experienced a downfall. Put differently, someone in ancient times took a hammer to his face. But his hairdo is still intact. They call it a mushroom hairdo, and it's specifically related to non-Egyptians from the area of ancient Canaan, Israel. Interestingly, it's quite the do, and the Talmud goes out of its way to tell us that Joseph was quite the fashionista. Genesis Rabbah, 87. In fact, the rabbinic midrash Tanhuma Vayesheb 8 specifically talks about Joseph curling his hair. The statue was found in a layer corresponding to about 1650 to 1700 BC. In other words, if we take 1450 to 1500 BC as the date for the Exodus, and if the Israelite sojourn in Egypt was around 200 years, the statue of this ruler perfectly fits the narrative of the biblical Joseph who ruled around 215 years prior to the Exodus. Based on the evidence, we can reasonably say that Joseph's statue has been found in Egypt. Conclusion. Many historical details from the Bible have been confirmed by archaeology. And there is no biblical narrative that has been falsified by archaeology. The Bible can be trusted as a collection of historical documents. Thanks to Michael Moat for compiling this information. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.